Okay, thank you everybody coming to this final session of the last day. So everybody's hanging around. Thank you so much. Let me close the door here. Great pleasure to have Sebastian here with us to talk about kick-ass data products, and he's come all the way from Munich to tell us about his experiences and so on. So I'm going to hand over to Sebastian here to take you through his story and his journey with Vistaprint and kick-ass data products, which I think is going to be a fascinating talk. Over to you, Sebastian.
Perfect.
Good to meet you.
Thank you so much, Bas. Yeah, and hey, thank you so much to all of you for making it and for your stamina to join this last slot and last session after a full 3-day program here. Both in person, also virtually. Hello. Great to see you, at least virtual, or not to see you, but great to have you part of the session. I'm Basti Klapdor. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Vista, and recently also was appointed Chief Data and Technology Officer, so I now lead the software development part as well. And I'm super excited to share about the almost 4-year journey now at Vista, building kick-ass data products on a data mesh and driving value for our customers and for our business. I would love to answer questions like, or I actually will answer questions like, what actually is a kick-ass data product? What makes it kick-ass? And what tech, people, processes are required to build them? How do we make the value from these data products stick, and how do we scale it up? How do we sustain it? And last but not least, a little bit the holy grail, how do we make data available in an organization like water so everyone can tap into it? Okay. With that, let's jump into it, and let me see whether that clicker works. Okay, it doesn't seem to work. Okay. Still doesn't work? Okay, I just keep pressing. Okay, and so you can already think about questions in the meantime, yeah, so.
Timely data.
Say again?
It's very timely.
Absolutely. Okay, try again. Maybe. Yeah, no.
Just hold on.
Okay.
We've done all the sessions. Last session has some tech issues.
Okay, something's changing. Okay. Gosh, at some point in time we had paper, right? Paper handouts, right? So, look at that, it's coming over. Okay, getting closer. That is the right presentation. Yeah, that is fantastic. So, while they're working on the presentation, let me already jump to the quick overview of what Vista is. Yeah? So Vista, who of you have, amazing, thank you. Who of you has heard of Vista? Okay, who of you has heard of Vistaprint? Quite some more, okay. This is how we started 25 years ago. As an online printing company focused for small businesses. Always with a very strong focus on technology and innovation. Vistaprint, actually, it's a nice story, was the first company that had an in-browser designer where you could, in Internet Explorer 4.0, design your own business cards. A lot of innovation happening there on the software development side, also on the manufacturing side. We have highly automated plants that produce all of these printed products. It's really impressive to see. There's a big one near Detroit in the Canadian side, and then also a big one in Europe. So that is our origin, where we come from, our heritage. And we've now grown to 1.7 billion company, being in over 25 countries. And we serve more than 50 million small business customers every year with printed materials, nicely designed things. For example, also these signage products here you see for trade fairs and congresses and events. And But this is not our North Star. Our North Star is actually to become the expert design and marketing partner for small businesses, because it's so hard often for small businesses to grow their business and find their customers. And it needs so much more than just this printed product. It always starts with a design, right? When you form a business, you need a logo, and you need to put the logo somewhere, typically now on a website, or you put it on a social media channel. And then at some point in time, you also attend congresses or symposiums or trade fairs like this, right? And you need also printed materials. And all of that needs to be nicely designed. It needs to look consistent and coherent so that you represent your business properly. And this is an incredibly tough problem for customers, to make that easy and consistent. A good friend of mine, Maria, she got self-employed during COVID as a professional coach, and literally, I think it felt to me, she was always talking about how hard it is to create a logo, find a designer, visual identity, design products that she could take to professional consulting fairs, right, and merchandising stuff. That it felt like, oh God, she was way more becoming a marketing expert than actually being a professional coach and doing what she loves, coaching people. So, and this is the pain, and this is kind of the pain that we want to take away from our customers, and it's the customer problem we want to solve, become the marketing and design partner for small businesses. So that's the North Star for Vista. And the CEO 4 years ago, and the founder of Vista, said, in order to get there, I need a lot of data, because data is super important. I need to understand what are the industries of my customers, because then I can personalize the products. I can personalize the marketing. I can personalize the designs, right? Generative AI. I can auto-generate designs that make it very easy for our customers to design something, because actually it is very hard to design something like this, to make it look professional. You start with an empty canvas, and there's nothing more intimidating than having a big white piece and time-consuming, and then to put a nicely looking design on it. So he knew he needs data, and lucky I am. Yeah, he hired a chief data officer, so I became Vista's first chief data officer. And before that, I was 12 years at McKinsey. I was running, supporting clients with data transformations, digital transformations, and I was doing that for Vista as well. I was at that time helping them on the dynamic pricing journey for Vista. And then Robert asked me whether I want to join as chief data officer. I said, yes, I do that. It's amazing to build up a data and analytics team for a 1.7 billion e-commerce player. Now, in order to get to that North Star, then I also defined a North Star or a vision for the data team. And I said, we got to have a bold vision, and the vision was to make Vista one of the world's most iconic analytics and data-driven companies. So that was the mission I put out there for myself. Now, before I jump into the journey, how we got to that, or how we are getting to that mission, we are still clearly not there yet. Let me briefly talk about my okay, I think this is even the old presentation. Okay, no problem. But we are getting there. Briefly about my core belief. You often hear, and I also heard it in the last 3 days a couple of times, data is the new oil. Yeah? And I think it is a terrible comparison, because oil is super tough to extract. Yeah? And you need these platforms you put in the middle of the ocean. You need these big pumps you see in Texas. Then it is super hard to transport it from A to B. You need these big pipelines. Nobody wants these big pipelines. There was a long discussion, I think, also in the US for a pipeline from north to south. Then if it leaks, yeah, it's pretty bad, because it's toxic, right? It is not creating life, but destroying life. And data should be, in my view, quite the opposite. It should be super easy to tap it from the water, right? You should be able to get it by the gallon from the source. It should be super easy to transport, to store, to access in a self-service way. You go to the tap, like there's a water tap over there. Yeah, you're just able to tap it there. And in the end, the most important thing, it is the basis for life, right? It creates life, and that's kind of how I would like also to see data at Vista. Therefore, you will see many pictures here that have to do with water. Okay. So I put out the vision, and I had that kind of philosophy, make data like water available at Vista. And then when I started, actually, it looked unfortunately not like this nice yacht that I show next to the mission statement, But Vista looked more like this wooden boat that did not even have an engine. So there was a clear ceiling towards with respect to the value Vista could extract from data at that time. And why was that? So 3 things. First of all, there was a tech and an organizational barrier and ceiling. From a technology standpoint, all of Vista's data was on a data warehouse on-prem in a server room 10 miles west from here. And that was managed by one central BI data warehousing team. And they were building layers on top of layers and tables on top of tables. And the velocity to access that data in that data warehouse was basically equals to 0. Then the capabilities were very siloed. The data capabilities at Vista, they were cut by function, by discipline. So there was this BI data warehouse team somewhere down in the stack. Then there were some data scientists somewhere in that stack, like a layered cake. And then there were some data analysts that were needed to access all of that data that was there. And the problem is that was all not domain specific. It was domain agnostic. So a business stakeholder had to go to a data analyst with a question, and then the data analyst didn't know that data because he didn't know it, right, or she, and then went to the BI warehousing team to understand what that data means, but they also didn't know it because they had to serve all of the data of the org. So they needed to go to the technology team who makes this data available and puts it and dumps it into the warehouse to find out what the data is. So it takes super long just to understand also what the data is there. So it was domain agnostic. And finally, the operating model was data as operations and not data as a product and not data as self-service. Because that then also you could only access it through the analysts. And the analysts would also build from time to time dashboards, and then somebody would ask, hey, cool, has stale data, can we update that dashboard? Yeah. Okay, unfortunately, the person who's built that left the company 1 year ago. So that was kind of a bit the operating model with data. You can see there's very little value from that. Any one of you facing one or multiple of these challenges or having heard about that? Yeah? 1 person, 2, 3? I see nodding faces, more. Okay, so that's. I'm glad we were not the only ones. Okay, what did we change? Okay, I need to jump a little bit left and right because that is the old, as I said, the old presentation. Okay, let me stay there on that. But it is equally as good as the new presentation. Don't worry about it. It's an amazing presentation. I just moved some slides left to right. So it was clear that we needed to change. And the vision was, hey, we needed to move from these component-based teams to end-to-end teams who own actually with all the capabilities on a team to make something happen. We needed to move away from data as an operations unit to data in a self-service way. We need to move away from one central agnostic team, domain agnostic team, to actually many domain-specific teams who know the data inside out, who are close to the business problems and can make things happen. And then that was kind of the North Star, and that means, okay, we made a decision to say we need to go for all-in for data as a product, and we built that on a data mesh. And that was the decision after, I think, week 4, and it was a pretty big one-way door decision. We have this concept, I don't know whether you know it, of one-way door and two-way door decisions. We have quite some ex-Amazonians at Vista, and this is an Amazon concept. So one-way door decisions are the big decisions. You go through that door, and you can only go in one direction through that door. So it's very, very tough to reverse that decision and go back. Two-way door decisions are decisions, yeah, okay, you can make it, and if it doesn't work, you go back because it's a revolving door, basically, and you can change again. The important thing is to know when do you have a one-way door decision and when do you have a two-way door decision. Be fast on a two-way door and be very thoughtful on a one-way door. It was very clear this is a one-way door decision. And the other slight problem was that at that time we were also changing our e-commerce website stack, and we were basically re-platforming that. And it was about to launch in 3 months, and it didn't have any instrumentation, reporting, nothing built in yet. So we needed to be super fast while moving on that journey. Okay, so we jumped on that journey, on that data product journey, and where we are now after 3.5 years, And sorry for that back and forth. This is where we stand now. So we have 190 data products that we built. Most, I think 120, 130 of them are in production now. Roundabout, we've grown the team from 60 to over 300 data professionals. They are working now in cross-functional teams and 25 cross-functional data product teams. And as I said, we do that on a data mesh architecture. You see a little bit our tech stack here on the left-hand side. But and the most important thing is not on the slide, the kick-ass piece with the dollar signs. These data products that we have put in production, they are generating every year an incremental annual recurring profit of $100 million. And that is, I think, a pretty sizable increase based on a 1.7 billion revenue baseline. So 100 million incremental annual profit that these products are generating. Okay, but that wasn't a very straight journey. We had to make some pivots. We had to change some things. And that's the stuff that I always find most interesting. And this is the things that I will love to share with you. 5 insights. Okay, now going back here. So the clicker works pretty well, yeah, going back and forth. Okay, 5 insights. Let me start, obviously, with the first one. And that is empower your data product teams. Okay, let me quickly again explain the logic of these data product teams, of these cross-functional teams. So we had the old stack, which often also I saw when I was working with my clients at McKinsey, is the division of the teams by disciplines. Yeah, you have the BI warehousing team, you have a data science team somewhere, you have an analytics team somewhere. And it's layers of the cake, and you always need to work through each of these teams to make something happen. What we changed is with the data product team is you have a vertical slice, basically, for a certain area of scope. And there's a certain problem of an internal customer or an external customer that you want to solve with that team. And that team has all of the superpowers on the team, the data scientist, the data analyst, a product manager, a data product manager. And the team also owns the stack. They own their own stack, so they can make the things happen. And they can make the things happen very fast, and they can decide the priorities of their work, and they have very, very fewer dependencies as if you would need to work your way through that layered cake down. And each of these other teams has different priorities. So this is the core principle. And that was actually the easy part. We said, okay, we're going to switch to these data product teams, and we're going to hire 10, 15, ramp up of these teams, yeah, and we're going to hire them, ramp that up, and then see what's happening. But then we figured out after a few months, gosh, some things are not working here. These teams are actually feature factories. They are doing basically what the stakeholders, the internal stakeholders from marketing, from our country organizations, from other organizations, what they were telling them. And they were telling them solutions. I need that feature. I need this solution. Please implement that for me on this dashboard. And that's a very tricky thing, and it's a very dangerous thing, because that solution might not always be the right and the best solution for the problem that the stakeholder needs to be solved. A big and really good, and I think nice quote and example for that is Steve Jobs, as he said, hey, if I had asked the customers about what are the features you need for the iPhone, I got the answer, I need more memory to store more text messages and more address contact data. Yeah? And clearly, the iPhone solved for a completely different customer problem. So that is the key. So you need to really work and understand with your internal stakeholder or your external customer, first of all, what is the problem that she or he wants to solve. So, and then you need to then empower, as a next step, you need to empower that team, that cross-functional team, to come up with a solution. So, and there's also a trick to that solution exercise. What you need to do is, that team, when they think about a solution, they need to do first ideate that solution, and then they need to do a solution validation super early on in the process, because they need to validate a solution for that the customer problem before you start writing the first line of code. Because there's nothing worse. You figure out after you shipped something and after you built something, gosh, this thing solves the wrong customer problem, or it's not the right solution to solve the problem. So how does this validation work? And again, the solution validation. Again, there is this three-legged stool of a data product team that all needs to work together to validate the solution as early as possible in the process. Okay, and that solution needs to be validated according to 4 criteria. Yeah, and let me start with the middle one. Its value and its viability. So, and that is typically the core task of the data product manager. So the data product manager needs to make sure the solution that the team is building is valuable for the customer. It drives value. And this can be, for example, for an internal customer, that can be also measured in the time, the willingness of time somebody invests into using a data product to drive value from it. For external customers, this is typically the willingness to pay for something. Yeah? So is it valuable for somebody to invest time and or money into that product? Then the product manager also needs to make sure that this thing is viable for the business, because if it's valuable for the customer but not viable for the business, there will be no more business at some point in time. This product doesn't make sense, so there needs to be an ROI logic basically for that product, that investment we need to make. Does it drive anticipated payoffs? We need to make it happen. Okay, that's value and viability. I jump to the right-hand side. Then what is super important to early on understand is the feasibility of that solution. And this is where the technical folks come in, right? This is where the data scientists, the data engineers, but also software engineers come in, right? So that was a change I did in this change that would also show software engineering, as I'm now leading tech and data. So I'm really bringing also these disciplines together on the teams. They need to be early on in the solution validation involved, because they are the best people to tell you and to represent the technology on the team and say, hey, we can solve this problem or we cannot solve it, and how expensive it is to build it and to run it and to operate it, to maintain it. Super important to have that early on in the solution validation. And then close to my heart, which we forget super often, especially in the data world about, is the test for the usability. Yeah? Thinking about the user, is this solution we are building here actually, is it usable? And is it also fun to use? Yeah? So what we're trying at Vista, what we then also learned right after the first steps, gosh, we have so many MVPs, minimum viable products, because that's the typical logic, right? You then prioritize the biggest customer problem and you ship that first in your first release, and that's called a minimum viable product. It's actually pretty bad. Why don't we push ourselves to make it just a little bit better, and we build a minimum lovable product so that we drive more adoption of our users early on, and we don't have to push them all the time to use it, but we create that pull. This is the usability part. So that typically are the designers on the team, the user experience designers. In our case, we often also have data analysts doing that job, because they often build the dashboards, the visualization, so they do user testing sessions with the users. Okay, so this is an empowered data product team. Cross-functional, you give them a problem, not the solution, and you make sure that they validate the solution early on according to these 4 criteria. Step 1. Took us some time to figure it out. Insight number 2. I talked a lot about the data product managers. That was actually also a problem when we started 3.5, 4 years ago. So we knew we wanted to build data products, so we needed to have data product managers, but there were no data product managers on the job market, because that was a completely new category of talent. So what we did is we just moved some of the data folks into these roles. Okay, now you're a PM for that data product team, have fun, do it. And that also was a bit kind of the problem that I linked back to that first one. Why weren't products being adopted? Why didn't we do discovery? Because they were lacking this product management apprenticeship, right, that we know from software product management. So, and over time, I think then we tapped into other sources where we can find great PMs for our data products. And actually, now we have a little bit of a logic established for that. And there are 3 big sources of talent for data product manager roles. The first one is indeed the data folks, right? The data engineers and the data scientists. And they are typically pretty good for data products that are highly technical data products, that are often just accessed via APIs in the back end, highly complex from a modeling perspective. For example, our recommendation engine, data product manager, came from the data community. Then let me jump to the left-hand side. Then obviously the obvious solution was to hire product managers that come from software product management. We also did that then, and kind of over time figured out that's actually really good for stakeholder-intense products, where you need this craftsmanship, where you need to do a lot of these viability testing, the kind of the value testing, where you need to interact a lot with stakeholders, where you also have complex stakeholder landscapes. So we do have some reporting products that are used by hundreds of people in different departments, and that is the product where we, for example, put on apprenticed, a really experienced software product manager. And then there's one more source we tapped into, it's domain experts. There are some data products in some domains where just the domain is so complex in itself, and it's very, very, and there it needs deep expertise. And these are things, for example, like our media mix model we built, that helps us to shift the money, our advertising money, across different channels, advertising channels, and we needed to have somebody who speaks marketing and who speaks kind of the language and knows ROI and all of these metrics that you got to use to optimize your marketing spend, TROAS and whatever it is. And that is an example where we said, hey, let's get a domain expert and teach him and coach him how to do software product management. Okay, learning number 2. Insight 3. Build the things on a scalable architecture. And this is actually a decision we made early on. We want to do that on the data mesh. So who of you has heard about the data mesh? That has changed. 2-3 years ago, when I was giving some speeches, maybe 5 people. Who of you, by the way, has tried it? Somebody tried it? Okay, so significantly less. Somebody fully adopted in operation? Yeah, 1 person. Cool, pass. So maybe that's worth quickly talk about what it. I give you a 2-minute download. What it is? It's basically, and also for us, the key. It's in the end an architectural paradigm how to organize data in a decentralized way in a company, in a domain aligned way. And that was also the biggest lift for us. It's way less about technology. It's about how to organize around data. So you have different domains. And in these domains, there are data producers and there are data consumers. And a data producer makes the data available on the data mesh. And at the same time, a data producer can be also data consumer. There's an obligation to make data available on the mesh. So if you have data, you have to share it, at least in an investigatable format, so that other teams can look into it. There's no data contract yet to it, but then once you start consuming it, and you need a certain SLA for that data, you can then also make a contract with the producer to get it in a certain quality, freshness, whatever. And all of that happens on a interoperable platform, basically, that is governed by a governance and by standards. Example, there is a data product, for example, that pushes our order data from our checkout funnel on the website and makes it available. There's a second data product from our manufacturing plants that publishes the production cost. There's a third data product that consumes both of these data products and creates a P&L for our financial reporting out of that. Very simple concept. There is another data product, example number 2, it's our recommendations engine that just takes data from many different places, from the customer domain, that takes data from the website domain, what do customers do, how do they interact with our websites, from the marketing domain, and creates personalized recommendations out of that. So that is the mesh. Actually, it worked for us pretty good because we had the beauty to reinvent the data stack, so we could greenfield start from scratch. So we directly started with a cloud data warehouse and just pushed everything, all the data in that. So we had it already from an infrastructure standpoint in one place that made it easier. But there are also many tools available even if you have a very heterogeneous data landscape to bring it together into a basically logical data mesh. What we struggled with was though data governance, and we had a very traditional approach to governance. So we hired data governance team with 3 to 4 people that would work with each of these data product teams and help them adopt the governance standards, get their things into the data catalog, right? Their data products, but also their data itself. But that hit somehow the ceiling, right? It didn't scale as we were then more and more ramping up more teams, more data products, right? And then they also became a little bit the policing unit. Yeah, if teams weren't doing that, teams were going more for impact and not for the governance tasks, right? We said we got to change that model. And what we did is really double down on computational governance. And what I mean with that is that we built the governance into our platform itself. So you cannot, for example, put a data product into production when you don't have it on a data catalog. Yeah, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Or what we also did is develop a pretty broad set of scrapers that would go into Git, because all of the code lies in Git, following software engineering excellence best principles, best practices, and check the code for anti-patterns. Yeah? So for example, we have an RFC, in security RFC, that says, hey, all teams need to rotate their API keys every 90 days. Do we know whether they did that? Yes or no? Nobody knows, right? So what we did is build one scraper that just checks, did they rotate their key? If they don't rotate their key, they will get an email. If they don't do that for multiple times, they still don't rotate the key, they get another email, right? And so you can build an escalation mechanism around it. And you can also start tracking kind of the compliance of teams using these computational governance mechanisms. Another one is, and it's not always these bad, oh, if you don't rotate the key, then at some point in time I will get the email, which I will get. And then it already happened, we shut down data products, financial data products, where keys were not rotated. But then the keys were very fast rotated. So that helps. But also a way more positive approach, right, in terms of helping teams to adopt best practices. There are also crawlers that are out there that just detect, for example, really badly written queries that use a lot of distinct statements, and they are very, very costly from a performance perspective and very non-performing because it takes forever. So, and then that team will get also an email notification, hey, your dashboards are running too long, you have these queries, distinct statements, here's really good best practices how to make it better. You can also call up the team of the data architects, they help you to improve your service. So this is the approach that then really helped us to scale on the governance side and unlock value. Are we doing on time? Good. Okay, cool. That was insight number 3. Insight number 4. So we had these empowered teams. We had good data product managers on that. We had it all on the mesh. Yeah, so that was nice and clean. And then after kind of 6 to 12 months into the journey, we said, gosh, okay, I've heard on a conference that the typical CDO lifetime is 2 years. And they are being fired because they can't report out their value, yeah, and they can't kind of show what impact they are driving. I also knew that from before, but we just had to build the foundations first, right? But at that point, it was in time to really invest into demonstrating what value is coming out of that, right? And helping also to actually make our investment decisions. In which domains, in which teams should we more invest, in which less. So therefore, we doubled down on tracking the impact. First thing is we went to our finance colleagues and got them into the boat to make it a joint collaborative effort, which I think is super important. And what we then did is we developed the so-called the BIMS, the Business Impact Measurement System. Yeah? And it is a fancy name, or maybe not so fancy name, for the thing you see on the left-hand side. And what it is basically, it is a measurement framework for data products that comes from the outcomes we want to drive. And we defined we want to drive 2 outcomes, 2 ultimate outcomes with the work we are doing. Financial impact, yeah, that's the 2 dollar signs in the kick-ass data product piece, and customer value. And customer value is measured as NPS or satisfaction scores, for example. That's the ultimate outcomes we want to drive. To do that, we need to make all of our decisions. We are driving at Vista more data-driven. And that can be human decisions by a human being, more data informed, but there can be also decisions that are automatically taken because somebody's doing something on a website, it's automated, and the website behaves in such a way, or an email system behaves in such a way. So getting to data-driven decisions, and this is all about adoption. So if you don't drive adoption, we said we got to monitor that, because if you don't monitor that, we don't have a good grip on are we getting to these outcomes. And then we went even further up in the chain in terms of predictive indicators. What are predictive indicators that people will adopt our data products? And these are things like data quality. So let's start measuring data quality. Automation of manual tasks. User experience. So we're doing surveys with users, 5-star ratings. How good is it to use this data product? Because if it's shit to use, we will not drive adoption on the human side, right? And then again, we will not come to these outcomes. And also things like data literacy, where we said actually data literacy is a leading indicator for the outcomes that we want to drive. And I think this is also a little bit of mindset shift, right? Often it's about, on these conferences, about data literacy, we need to drive data literacy, but it's not an outcome, it's an input, right? It's an input to outcomes like more financial income, output, or customer value in the end. Now we got that in place and started measuring that for each of the data products and reporting that out in our quarterly business reviews. And that actually then also led to the fact that we shut off 35 data products because they were just not driving the impact we thought they would drive. And we refocused the teams on more valuable data products. Okay, impact. And then last but not least, data-driven culture. Yeah, that is also obviously a topic that is dear to all of our hearts, but also a little bit of a surprising insight I wanted to share with you here. Obviously, you all know data-driven culture is so important, data literacy, communicating around it, right? We also did that from day one. I mean, I come from McKinsey, change management, right? This is what you need to do, communicate, change, drive that. I think we did that too much. I think we swung the pendulum too much over. What we did is we talked about being data-driven. We put it into our career frameworks, into our hiring interviews, which is all good. But I think we could have been more specific what data-driven really means. And that would be my big takeaway for all of you. Be really precise what it means. Because what's happened in some parts of our company is that people were not making any more decisions. They were just saying, okay, I need to be data-driven. I better do these 5 analyses before I make a decision. Even if it was a two-way door decision, where you could just, in the end, make the decision, make sure you can measure what you want to drive, your outcome, and then see whether you move in that direction. If not, go back through that two-way door. So people were kind of not really using their business instincts and their gut instincts and combining that with data. In a yin-yang model, they were really doubling down too much on data, and they were too afraid to make any decisions without having a perfect set of data. So and I think this is also what I think as data professionals need to have on our radar screen when we push organizations to be more data-driven. You always want to combine data with this business instinct, right? We are not there yet, because else we could build the systems that run the company, right? And just automate everything, and there's just us pressing the button every morning, or not, because you could also automate that. Therefore, I think it's important to instill that yin and yang, this yin and yang, be data-driven. Okay, that was learning number 5. Now, this is how it looks today. This is the map of the 190 data products across our 8 domains. It really spans from marketing to manufacturing, supply chain. I talked about these big plans. We have these data products also for data governance and architecture. These are all these crawlers. For example, this Looker crawler looking for badly written LookML models. Pricing, promo, personalization, custom experience. So that is the landscape as of today. And let me just double-click into 3 of them and share a bit why I think they are kick-ass. This is an example for our 2,000 people customer care organization. They have a weekly meeting. They call it the weekly business review, where they review how the last week went in terms of operational performance. That used to be prepared by an army of analysts. An army of analysts had to manually prepare that. It was a 3-day work to get all of this data together. And then the other 3 days, they were following up and chasing follow-up questions that came from that data manually. Now, by building that data product, we reduced 95% of that work. And that's actually not even the super exciting thing. It's a little bit of productivity increases, but what it really unlocked is actually a really sustainable operating model with regards to reporting, because one team owned that thing. So whenever the stakeholders wanted to have more data exposed, they could just go and build it and implement it because they own the full stack, from the visualization over the pipelines, over the transformations, the models behind it. They could just do it, right? So this thing now has 643 drillable fields. You can double click. It's super interactive. It is really self-service, and now the stakeholders use that on their own. So I think it's a pretty cool example for a data product that drives value on the reporting side. Let's switch to a customer-facing data product. That's the recommendations engine. Yeah, and here what the team that we needed to implement that when we launched a new website. So we had a very short time to build a entirely new recommendation engine for the website. So this is based on machine learning, and this is collaborative filtering basically, and a neural network combined. And typically, and also in the old world, it was incredibly hard to get data from our warehouse and use it in ML-based products. With the new approach, the data products on the mesh, that team could just go around and shop features literally. It was incredible to see. They could go to the different domains. Each of these domains knew exactly what their data was about. They could explain it. They could not only that, but they could problem solve with them and help them crowdsource features for their models. Yeah? And in that way, we were able to, just within 3 months, launch a recommendation engine on a website that increased our profit by 5%. This is pretty valuable. And then obviously that was maintained and kind of drives even more value now as we release more and more product features here. And then the last one where I wanted to just deep dive a bit, it's about coming back to also customers, also being relevant for our customers and being personalized for our customers, which is very important. Emails. So at the beginning of our journey, Vista Print was sending out one email for all of these 15 million customers, one marketing email, the same email. Although there were financial advisors, retailers, tax consultants, dog walkers, and we wouldn't send the same email to all of them, right? That's pretty bad, actually. So what we built is a model, a data product that infers the industry of the customers from the content they upload, from their pictures, from their texts, from their customer data, from their profile. And with a pretty good now precision, we can say what the industry is and change the actual emails, the designs that we have on them, and also in between now the products that we advertise. And that obviously makes it way more relevant for our customers and also drove up engagement with these emails by version 1, MLP of that data product by 15%. Okay, and with all of that, let me jump on that. I'm super excited to continue that journey at Vista and bring data and technology even closer together, as I believe there's so much more synergies from having these functions joined and having a very data-informed product development also on the technology side, and share with you maybe in 12 or 24 months the next 5 pitfalls we fall into and we hopefully dug ourselves out again. And with that, you can also follow our journey on LinkedIn. I'm always super happy to connect, or check out our blog at vista.io, where the data team basically writes blog articles about our data products, about our journey on the data mesh. So feel free to check it out. With that, I think we have 15 minutes for questions. So who has the first question?
Okay, so firstly, I've obviously listened to 3 days of a lot of talks personally. That was one of the best. Okay, so firstly, big round of applause for Sebastian. That was just right up there. Okay, okay, questions. I'm sure there's lots online. Okay, I'll go nearest first. Okay.
Thank you very much for the great presentation. I have a question about the approach. You described in the beginning you have a vertical data product team, right? So which probably consists from the front end until all the way to the back end. And later on, you describe the architecture mesh structure, meaning it's a decentralized. So that indicates a decoupling of the front end people with the back end team. So how do you consider these two approaches are in line with each other?
It is basically, so there is a team that has the entire stack, and the stack doesn't include the infrastructure. So the basic infrastructure is operated by an infrastructure team, and this is the cloud data warehouse, and they do that. But from there on, the teams own their entire stack, their data science models, their front ends, their data pipes, everything. So they just get the infrastructure basically.
Got it. So by data product team, you mean it's not full FD, it's the full SDLC team? My question is that maybe I can ask, what's a basic question is that how do you define a data product? When you enable the business users, like you empower them to build whatever they want, do you define what they come up as a data product?
We do have, no. So we enable people to build data products, but there is a definition for what a data product is, and it needs to hit certain criteria. Because what we don't want to do is have just anybody build a dashboard and that is suddenly a data product, right? And then, because if that then happens, right, that person leaves maybe, right? Or it's a badly built data product and that erodes then trust in data overall, right? It's not good for the organization. And also, when something is officially clarified as a data product, it needs therefore to fulfill certain criteria, right? It needs to certain security criteria, engineering excellence criteria. You need to have your code on Git. You need to do merge reviews, for example, by other teams and things like that. So there is a hurdle to be an official data product, and that comes with benefits and also responsibilities, basically.
Thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation, Dr. Sebastian. So my question is more towards on the value creation and attribution, right? Great, like you mentioned, $100 million value created using these data products. Can you speak to the philosophy of how you are able to get the business buy-in and now where that value is accounted for and how it is actually attributed for?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, as we heard in another great panel, it's all about coalition building, right? And it's about working with the stakeholders across the company to do these joint projects together and unlock that value. Yeah? With regards to the attribution, what we also do is double counting. That's okay for sharing the so to say sharing the fame. Yeah. But what we need to dedupe, obviously, when we talk about investment decisions, right? Therefore, it's super important for investment decisions to be clear what a data product contributed and what money and what investment was needed to build that product. So what we, for example, do is on a product team level, account for all of the cost, not only the people cost, but also the cloud spend, for example, again, which is provided by the infrastructure team. They have a product that tells each of the data product teams, sends the monthly cloud bill basically for all of the cloud tools they are using so that they have a good view on, okay, that's the cost that incurred and that's the impact we created. Yeah? And that's an important when you make these investment decisions that you obviously don't double count because you can't spend the money twice, just get it once. And this is where also our finance team is then helping us.
Any other questions?
How did you persuade the top management to get started? Because I could imagine that to build up this domain-oriented model, you need to increase the amount of engineers, scientists, etc., distribute them to the business departments. Then you might have resistance there. I mean, they are doing a lot of stuff, but not data yet. Yeah. So how did you get started? Because, I mean, you have so many obstacles there.
Yeah. So first of all, have a positive mindset and be naturally an optimist, right? Because if you start with and I believe, actually there are many gazillion obstacles and you need to have them on the radar screen so that you're smart about how to navigate them. So absolutely. But don't let yourself tear down and bring you down by the obstacles. That's the challenge. If it was easy, right, anybody could do it. Okay, that was my consultant speech. Sorry for that. What I actually did is, I looked at the business value chain with my team and we thought about, okay, looking across these different domains, that's the value pools we see in each of these domains from doing more with data. And we actually then estimated that. And that's a run rate value, incremental run rate value of 300 to 400 million. And each of these domains had a different value pool. Manufacturing had, I don't know, 80 million. Marketing, because we're spending so much marketing dollars, if you optimize that, that's a huge uplift. Marketing is 150, 180 million long-term value generation, right? And this is about value pools. This concept is basically, if you were to do top-notch stuff, as of today, what we can do, what we define as top-notch, this is the value you could unlock. And with that, then you can go to your stakeholders and say to the CMO, to the CFO, to the sales officer, to the different functions, say, hey, look, this is the value we're seeing. These are very transparently the assumptions behind that. Do we want to get started with the first data product? And what you then do is what I describe as the flywheel, the data flywheel. And what you start with one data product or two data products, prove the value, and measure the value. Yeah? So we didn't only start measuring the value after 12 months. Obviously, we're doing that also a little bit earlier because you can also do that for certain data products very easy through A/B tests, the recommendation engine. You switch it on, off, yeah, on the website, or take the old algo and the new model, right, and you run it as a split run A/B test, 50% traffic each, and you see the uplifts directly. So you show these wins, and these wins already produce money in the bank. You estimate what 12 months run rate value does this generate. And then basically you say, cool, that gives me more money to invest. And you invest more money into the platform and the way of working and the data mesh, the infrastructure team that can do all of that. Not all of the money, but a little bit of, right? And you build off your foundations. And that helps you then to build the next data products more efficiently and better and faster. So you can build more faster, and that gets then and that drives more business value. You can reinvest more into the basics in your talent, platform, everything. And that's the data flywheel, how we try to get going.
Okay, any other questions? There's one online. Oh, sorry. A couple of here.
Thanks, nice presentation. So a quick question around, like, you have this domain-specific data products. It could be probably based on a value stream or maybe a domain like a finance, sales, etc. So especially in the data space, you have more cross-functional, products that are supposed to be produced, right? And where you see a bigger value as such. So how did you kind of approach for that type of cross-functional solutions like Customer 360 or maybe anything along those lines?
For that, we have a customer domain, yeah, and it sits in the customer domain. So in the end, the domain, it comes back to the domain modeling, right? How do you cut, slice, and dice your domains? And I think this is a little bit an art and a science at the same time. There is no analytics formula that helps you to define the perfect domain model. So, and you need, first of all, to start with some criteria, design principles, how you want to design your domains, right? And then start doing it. It's clearly a two-way door decision because you can change domains and it's a living and breathing system, right? But you need to have a clear domain map out there. This is one of the things that's very important for the beginning from day one, that you drive clarity in such a federated model, right? You need to have, like on a city map, very clear boundaries, streets that divide the quarters from each other, right? And have clear accountabilities as per that. But that can evolve over time, right? So that you can change it. We close domains, we merge domains, we split domains that became too big. So this is a living and breathing.
It's more soft lane separation than
It is hard lane separation, but it's evolving, right? It's not set in stone forever. But once it's there, it's very clear who does what. So there's no overlap in accountabilities. But indicators, for example, that you have a wrong domain model is that teams need to communicate a lot, that teams need to interact a lot, that there's a lot of dependencies. Team A can't get something done without working with these 3-4 other teams. Yeah? And that's always an indication that your domain model is wrong. It's obviously also very important to have the right domain model because that determines your future architecture of the things you are building in the end. So keep that in mind. When you build your domain model, one criteria should be the architecture you want to end up with. Conway's law, super interesting.
Okay. Question in the front here.
Thanks. So Basti, the data product management problem has not really been solved with respect to having like a lot of people who are really good at this out there in the industry. I noticed that you had people with multiple, I'll call it product management titles in your group. So you obviously have some sort of career pathing or a product management group. I was wondering if you could describe that more.
We actually, sorry if that came across the wrong way, we only have one career path for data product managers, but we hire and source them from different disciplines, from software PMs, from data engineers, from the data expert field, right, the data scientists, data engineers, and also from domain experts. So they come from they have different basically skills, and then we move them into that path, and each and everyone needs them to learn a little bit something else, right, based on the experience.
So I saw data product analyst on there. Is that not like a path that leads to product manager?
No, not necessarily. It's an own path on its own, and the data product analysts, they are typically, you could also call them analytics engineers. So they build visualizations, but they can also go into the code. They can build data pipes, and so they are builders on the data product teams. They are not in product management. I know where you might be coming from. Typically in software development, you also have product analysts that help the PMs finding out what are the features we should build, how valuable are they. Let's run an A/B test, split run. They analyze it then afterwards. So we actually also have that role, and that would be a supporting role for PMs, and that goes in there. So if I wasn't shown on the chart, but thanks for the question. But that's a more common thing that we have in our software development teams, the product analysts. Because the data product teams, they're often, anyway, so data savvy, even the data engineer can do the statistics, right? And there's less need for an embedded analyst that supports the PM.
Question online, which is trying to, there's multiple online questions coming in, most I've had this time. The question is, I'm trying to summarize it. You've got 190 data products running on an infrastructure. You've got plans for many more data products. How do you make sure that the infrastructure and the management and the complexity of managing 190 data products is governed or managed?
Yeah, super question. I mean, it has different facets to it, right? One thing is we need to make sure that our infrastructure and platform is evolving with the needs of these products, right? So we need to, therefore, the platform and the infrastructure team needs to talk a lot to the different domains and understand what are their domain visions. So each domain publishes a vision, a document where they've written their 3 to 5 year plan, how they want to evolve the data products in the respective domain. This is massively important input for the platform team, for example, because then they can get a feeling, okay, gosh, they want to go massively into generative AI, so we gotta look, we need to get GPUs, basically, or our tools to manage GPUs in the cloud and make that available, right, and invest into that part of the infrastructure and the architecture. So that's how we manage that. So long-term planning, visions, and that is then consumed by the platform teams to do that. The actual management of the data product is all decentralized within the teams. They build it, they operate it, so it's DevOps. Basically, you also run what you build to align incentives, not to build shitty stuff and throw it over the fence. Yeah, and that's how we do the operations part.
Question is.
Hi, this is Shubha Sapad. Thank you for the presentation. A very good overview. So my question to you is, when you started, did you have the vision to say this is going to take you 4 years, 5 years? Did they ask you how long it's going to take? Because our board always asks me that, and I was like, I don't know. It depends on how your business is going to vary. I could be at 100 products or 5 products. It depends on what the business asks for. How do you answer that?
Yeah,
Thank you.
it actually never ends, right? Because if you want to be kick-ass or world-class or iconic or really have a bold ambition, right, you're never there because the world is evolving around you. And what the important pieces where I then try to shift the conversations to is when am I able to show value? Yeah? And hey, if we show value on the way, what value do we need to show to support the ongoing journey? Right? And I think that is the conversation that then really helps to say, hey, look, in a year from now or 18 months from now, that's the rough value pools that we want to tackle, and that's the value we want to unlock. Therefore, we need X, right? And then you do that basically on a recurring basis and plan out. But I wouldn't give an ETA date for when are we there. We're never there, right? Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much for the presentation and the question. Just a couple of bad takeaways. Data is like water. Well, don't forget that. Value pools, to go figure out what the value pools are, which is kind of key. Doors, one-way door, two-way door. Revolving doors. Some of us have been there, yeah. Okay, so have that in mind. Have a multi-year strategy, 3-year strategy here. This was not 6 months, okay? This was 3 years. So you've got to get board buy-in, CEO buy-in. So there's a 3-year strategy to put all this together, and value of $100 million. That's a big number, okay? So Sebastian, thank you for coming all this way and sharing your experience with us. Awesome, thank you.